stop right there. I've combined 5 major mistakes that you are definitely making in Diablo Season 4, and if you're not making all of them, you're definitely probably making one. It can not only greatly slow down the leveling and gearing process for your character, and you can potentially lose a lot of power and a lot of damage for your character by making any one of these individual mistakes. Now, the first big mistake you can make is actually tempering your gear too early, but also not tempering your gear at all. Let me explain. So before you get to about level 35, where you can initially start to now get sacred gear and do the first capstone dungeon, moving from world tier 2 to world tier 3, you don't necessarily have to, if you want, temper before moving to world tier 3. However, if you find the tempering manuals to go ahead and temper your gear, yes, even in world tier 2, it honestly might really benefit you to do it, even if it just takes a second and on a couple pieces of gear. And I'm going to show you exactly why. So we obviously get tempering manuals from a lot of places, from doing the Hell Tides in world tier 2, as well as getting the rewards from our Iron Wolves encampment via the Iron Wolves questline. Now, the more you level up and move through world tiers, you'll eventually unlock higher tempering recipes, going from normal rare recipes all the way up to legendary recipes that give you much higher tempering benefits in terms of the affix values that are actually on the weapon. Now, once you've unlocked some decent tempering effects for your gear, it's good to go ahead and do it as soon as humanly possible, even if you only have a few materials early on to do so. And this is specifically for things that will greatly benefit your class. For instance, I'm playing a Dust Devil Barbarian. In order to bring the Dust Devil Barbarian online and not just be a double swing Barbarian, we up our damage tremendously by having the Dust Devil affixes on our gear. Now again, not only do we need the aspects itself for this build to actually work in particular, but once we have the aspects for them, if we already have those, you want to make sure you temper as early as possible. For instance, as an example for Sacred Rares, you can actually temper one affix on them. So having one affix, such as the 205% Dust Devil damage for our Dust Devil build, is an extremely huge buff to our Dust Devil damage, meaning we're doing a lot more damage overall across the entire board, which makes us level up much quicker. Again, if that means you just come in here, pick one singular recipe to get one specific effect on your gear. Obviously, I'm using legendary gear here, so it costs a little bit more, but on normal sacred rare gear, for instance, it costs very little to do it, and even less to do it on other pieces of gear. So it doesn't hurt, it's so cheap to do it, and it gives you way more power to go ahead and level up. Again, if you have 2 or 4 weapons, go ahead and just throw some tempers on there, even if you plan on swapping them out, because it's totally worth it. By the time you get to the end of World Tier 3 or World Tier 4, you're going to have a million resources from all the things you've salvaged. So those earlier materials, you will not miss one single bit. The next big mistake is something you should be ahead of, and it's in the pit. One of the huge pit mistakes you can make is not running them efficiently, but also wasting a lot of the materials. In Season 4, it's very expensive to masterwork your gear. Obviously, masterworking makes your gear much more powerful by upgrading all of the individual affix values, some even up to 25% when upgrading a piece of gear on levels specifically for 8 and 12, meaning you can actually get a bunch of added stat benefit from that. Now, running the pit in an efficient time, being 5 to 6 minutes per pit run, is much more beneficial than spending 15 minutes on a pit run, because it just takes way more time to do so, especially if going for the same resources. Now, this is a huge misunderstanding with the pit, and you should continue to push the higher levels. As long as you're still efficient in completing them in time, you should continue to push as high levels as possible, and that's for one good reason. When we actually go to masterwork our gear, let's say we have our helmet at level 4 masterworking and our chestplate at level 4 masterworking. By the way, you should try to get all these pieces to level 4 to get the big 25% bonus on all the gear before you decide to keep on pushing one to the highest. The only time you should push a piece of gear to the highest or level 12 is if it is a perfect best in slot piece of gear. In that case, you can go ahead and max it all the way out because you know you're never going to replace it. Nonetheless, if we have a helmet and chest at 4 and all the rest of these are at 1, and then we get into our next tier of pit levels, and we're now getting the higher level material, what would be known as Ingolith. If we actually start getting that material, you should keep pushing those higher level dungeons, because that material, once you get it, can actually be used to upgrade the lower level pieces through 1 through 4 still. And you can do that by finding an alchemist anywhere, and you can then do the small obusite, medium, or large obusite caches, and those turn 1 of the higher level materials into 3 of the lower level materials. Because you get a lot more of the lower level materials this way, it actually makes it way more efficient to continue pushing those higher levels, and then just boosting that higher level material. You can turn it in, grab a bunch of it at once, and upgrade a ton of these all at the same time. Again, you can do this with Nethiron the same way you can do it with Ingolith. You can turn Nethiron, if that's what you're getting, into Ingolith to upgrade all of the rest of your gear that you need from levels 4 to 8. So make sure you're using the Alchemist for this and keep pushing high tier levels again at efficient times so that we can max out how quick you're gearing up your in-game character, and know you're not wasting any time or resources this way. Now, the next big mistake you can make is when it comes to the Iron Wolves reputation system. So the more you do Hell Tides, the more Iron Wolf reputation you get, and the more reputation or honor you get, the more you rank up this system and unlock a bunch of specific rewards. Now, there are some big things to keep an eye on here that you really want to pay attention to. So obviously with the Hell Tide, I have a full video on my channel of the mistakes you don't want to make and how to be completely efficient in Hell Tides to get the most XP and the most honor, etc. But when leveling, you want to make sure you're focusing primarily in Hell Tides to get the most amount of honor possible. And that's for really two reasons, but one specifically is to complete a lot of these. The more of these you complete, the more automatic legendary and unique gear you get right off the bat. You can complete this and get a unique piece of gear very, very quickly in season 4, meaning you can have a ton of legendary and unique gear, not just from the actual Hell Tides themselves, but also from here, which gives you a huge boost, especially early in the game. You should also make sure you don't wait to claim these. My first instinct when playing was to look at these and say, you know what, I should save this unique reputation cast for hitting 100 so I can have a level 100 unique. It only benefits you to claim them now and use them to level up, because they include not just this, but a ton of resources, potions for XP, a ton of different things that help you level and build out your character. And without them, your progress is going to be extremely slowed. So make sure you claim these as quickly as you can, and make sure you're getting as much honor as you can from the Hell Tides. And additionally, make sure you're also claiming these as quickly as humanly possible. You can use these, especially the legendary one down here with the max movement speed on it, to actually temper this movement speed onto different pieces of gear, and also enchant pieces of gear to change the affixes themselves to put movement speed, let's say, on your boots and on your amulet, so that way you can have 2 movement speeds here, temper 2 movement speeds again. You might even be able to temper movement speed again on your rings and be moving around the map like super fast and level very quickly this way. So make sure you're working on these and claiming these. Now, the next big mistake I already see people making is not focusing on your season blessings, and your season blessings give you a ton of different bonuses, especially XP and Paragon XP boost, which the XP boost obviously speaks for itself, and the Paragon XP boost is extremely amazing for leveling our glyphs, saves us from having to do a lot of extra nightmare dungeon runs. Now, when it comes to the season journey, obviously you just complete different challenges within the season journey, you get favor, and then as you unlock your smoldering ashes down here, you can then use them for your seasonal blessings. There's a way to specifically target some of these that is actually really useful. So a lot of these challenges include things like doing a cellar, doing a dungeon. So as you start playing, make sure if you see something you haven't done, do it once, no matter what it is, do it once, because it's probably a challenge. For instance, like a cellar or a dungeon or a world event. Then the next big one is finding like cinders and stuff in Hell Tides. There's a specific good way to actually do this. For instance, for level 3, things like defeat monsters while at max threat level during Hell Tide, you want to make sure you pay attention to your threat level in Hell Tide. Once you get your threat level to almost the max amount it can be, make sure before you hit that max amount on that threat meter, you find like a ritual or some sort of big event, even if it's the Blood Maiden event. So that way, once you kill a couple more enemies, you max out that threat meter, and you have the time it takes from that meter to go from here all the way down to 0 to kill as many monsters as you can that counts towards this progress. And it can take a long time to actually complete this challenge if you're not specifically trying to do it. So that way you get all the monsters that spawn from the threat meter, and you get all the monsters that spawn from the vent or whatever else you're around, maxing out the amount of monsters you can kill during that short window, helping you to complete this challenge and the one that's in World Tier 4. There's also another one in World Tier 4 right here for defeating monsters while at max threat level once again. Additionally, other things like consuming elixirs, make sure you're doing that. Make sure you're paying attention to these to complete them as quick as possible. The faster you do them, the faster you get XP boosts for basically everything in the game. And also, one you want to make sure you do is go ahead and complete the blood marked ones before everybody and their mama starts doing it, because it might get harder. If you're not familiar, you have 2 challenges in the season journey where you have to actually go into the PvP zone and blood mark yourself and kill a bunch of enemies in here to complete it. The more people start to come in here, the more people that are going to be killing you, because it's a PvP zone, the longer it's going to take you. Go ahead and knock those out as early as possible. But it also gives you a bunch of grim favors, which you can use to turn in for your whisper caches, which requires 10 of them to be turned in for another seasonal challenge. So you have to really put effort into focusing these down, knocking them out, and getting all your XP boosts. And finally, maybe the biggest mistake I'm going to see people making right now, especially with how powerful builds are, is not focusing on transitioning world tiers and focusing specific Hell Tide items enough. Once you get to World Tier 2 and you hit level 35, you should go ahead and do the capstone dungeon, or at least try it, because once you do that and you bump up, from World Tier 2 getting 50 increased XP, you then bump up to World Tier 3 and get 150%. Not only does this make you level quicker, but it makes that process from going to level 35 to going to level 50 much faster, and it overall cuts down your leveling time by a ton of hours. Additionally, once you get to World Tier 3 at level 55, that's when you should focus on doing the second capstone dungeon, so you can go from 150% increased XP to 250% increased XP. Again, that cuts down not only your leveling time overall, but leveling 50 to 70 by, again, multiple hours sometimes. That will help you level way faster. Make sure enemies are 10 levels above you at all times if possible, giving you the most XP. And then for Hell Tides, make sure you're focusing on primarily finding 2 chests. The mystery chest that will give you a ton of baneful hearts, a ton of resources, and a ton of legendary items, and also finding the living steel chest. These will give you, again, a ton of items, baneful hearts, and also living steel, which we'll use to summon late game bosses. So it's good to go ahead and stack up on those while you're constantly running through Hell Tides, leveling in the earlier portions of the game. That being said, those are all the big mistakes you better not make in Diablo 4 Season 4. If this video helped, drop a like on it, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.